Hey all, and welcome back to the HSC playthrough of Super Mario 64. Today we're going to be taking you on, essentially, an aquatic tour, because the levels in this part are all water-based.
Water or water adjacent, but yes, we've got enough stars now to be able to open up a new door. We've had enough stars for a while to open up a new door, but, you know, I'm taking it slow, and we're getting new environments here, but I'm also talking to the toads, because no one else talks to the toads in their playthrough outside the mandatory ones, so you get to experience this bit of joy as well.
Aww.
It's a little bit sad that Bowser had so little care for these toads that he didn't even bother to, like, put them in a portrait or whatever the hell actually happened to Peach. By the way, they would basically bring that back for King Boo in Luigi's Mansion, so, you know, Nintendo never want to waste ideas.
That kind of works for the Mario world, though, to be fair. It's something that I really do appreciate about just the Mario franchise as a whole. The fact that they do get use from, like, other characters while still keeping it tied together. The fact that the other characters, like, say, Luigi has his Luigi's Mansion series, you have Wario, who has Land and WarioWare and stuff like that. And, like, although they're unique ideas that can be experienced on their own and appreciated on their own, it's still not too far away either.
No.
And it's kind of the thing that I'm hoping Sonic starts doing now they're opening up with Shadow Generations.
It would be nice. I mean, say what you will about the level of excitement that, like, the Princess Peach Showtime had. That was a fun little game, and
I enjoyed it a fair bit.
Yeah, it's nice to sort of have that exploration of other ideas using characters that everybody recognises. Like, I think a lot of people, sort of in some ways, have wanted some sort of, like, beat-em-up, slight type game with Knuckles for a while. It was obviously one of the bigger conversations that happened around, would the Werehog have been better received if it had been Knuckles rather than the Werehog? And part of me suspects probably a little bit, yes. Obviously, other issues going on there, but the core principle. I think, yeah, it's nice to sort of explore what your different characters can do and who they can be.
It's just the general idea that you have this entire world you've created, why not let's explore more parts of it?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see this kind of thing, and I feel like that's a big part of why Nintendo have such a hold. Yes, we have the ill. Yes, I'm going to try and bait him out, and then, yes, I hope we never see him again, even though we will.
I have a secret fear that at the bottom of the sea where no one's explored, the eel just is swimming around doing whatever.
I'm sure it is, Tom.
There are creatures in real life who look like him. I'm sorry to put that idea out there, but they exist. And if you ever go diving, you might meet them.
I know what a moray eel is. I'm talking about, like, El Gigante versions of them.
Imagine if there's just, like, one oddly low poly looking one just in real life.
Imagine if there's no people, and that includes you.
I deserve that. But now I kind of want to see, like, a one-off, like, novelty Absu mod or something where they just stick him in like, some completely, like, random area where you're not expecting him.
Can I just apologise for being such a pissy little bitch during the Absu playthrough back in the day? I have no idea why that was. If we ever do it again, I will take the time to, you know, properly sit down with it and truly appreciate it.
Good. I mean, I will always say it's like Journey, but not as good as Journey, but it's still a nice little ride.
I think both are very strong games, and while I understand that the comparisons in the game's structure and whatnot are inevitable because they do follow a similar structure,
yeah,
I feel like that's not the main selling point of those games. It's more the environments that you're exploring, and on that point, they are both offer very unique experiences.
Oh yes, without a doubt.
That's kind of why I appreciate both of them as much as I do.
That's fair enough.
Part of the reason why I like this level as well is that I have this sort of lingering discomfort with underwater areas, but that makes it more exciting to explore it. It's like it kind of keeps me on edge, so I'm paying more attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
And so when you do see beautiful moments under the water, it challenges my precognitions about it, and it makes me appreciate what's there. This fucking section right here, where I probably should have took damage from him, and only the very loose hitboxes were saving me, not so much, but still.
I mean, hey, you take what you can get.
I don't know whether it's as much a phobia of water as I have, as it is just like a general underlying anxiety that I have with water that kind of sets me on edge with things like this. But it kind of makes it... This is probably an experience that I don't think that many people would be able to relate to quite as closely, but it's part of why when I'm swimming around underwater here, I have this uncomfortable experience that I'm being looked after by the gentle music, the best piece of music in the game, I'll say that.
Well, it's up there.
It's just such a beautiful piece of music, and it's another one of them when I think of the Mario 64 soundtrack, I think of the Jolly Roger Bay and Dire Diadox soundtrack, and it's just I love this, you know?
That's fair. I mean, I will say, so there are two sort of types of water phobia.
Yeah.
The one that most people reference is thalassophobia, which is a fear of the ocean or other large, deep bodies of water. That generally is either related to the vastness or emptiness of the ocean, the sea creatures that live in the ocean, or both. And I will say that I think it is a relatively common phobia, actually. Whether it's depending on the intensity, so some people have it a hell of a lot worse than others. But I don't think you're alone in there being a level of discomfort when it comes to the ocean. I mean, I think I I love looking at the ocean. I think it's beautiful. The second I step foot in it, then I start to go a little bit, because I have a whole thing, I don't like fish.
Well, it's also it's baked into our DNA because humans live on the land. We're not meant to be in the water. Our whole body is not acclimatized to it. The water itself is poison to us because it's filled with salt, so no wonder we're scared of going in the fucking thing.
I think there's two layers of it, really, isn't there? There's the fear of the ocean, and there's also the fear of water in general.
Yes, so fear of water in general is aquaphobia.
That's kind of where it comes to me. I know it's one of the things very unique to myself in this respect, but whenever I have something that causes some kind of discomfort, my psyche will never, ever, ever suppress that. I remember being slightly uncomfortable taking swimming lessons as a child, knowing that the pool was slightly deeper than I was tall. It's if I'm ever back in water, any considerable depth of water, I very much consider the fact that I am small and the pool is big. And so that's I imagine that's why the ocean phobia is so strong for a lot of people as well. It's the ocean being as deep and as big as it is, it reminds you that how small you are and the fact that it could swallow you if it wants to.
Yeah, we know more about space right now than we do about the depths of our own planet's oceans.
Yeah, and even then, you wouldn't want to be launched into space. So when you got that sort of relativity, you get a bit of an idea of what we're talking about.
This has been a really deep conversation. Can we go back to the fart and dick jokes again?
Can we never do that?
Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah, Wario isn't in this version of the game. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just put that HellfireComms branding on the side, and you can take it or leave it. Alright, coming up to our 20th star here.
I think this is one of the things that is nice about Super Mario 64 is that it does go quite quickly. It's not a short game, but it moves at a very brisk pace, and that's just nice and fun to experience, really.
Yeah.
Just keeping up that pace is just a very important part of this kind of game, because there's a lot of stars to get. Obviously, it's 120-star game, and each of the levels has a lot of them. but there's never really gonna be one that you're on for hours, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's no real... Like, there's a few, like, maybe in the Boo Mansion level. Like, you know, you gotta know where you're going to a degree. But for the most part, it's like, you can kind of keep a good flow going. And that's something that I feel like they really doubled down with on the, with the moons in Odyssey. Because that game, I feel like one of the strongest things about that game is that you can spend as little or as long in a play session of that game as you like, and you're still gonna get something out of it.
It's one of the things where I think if you look at the trajectory of 3D Mario games, like the mainline 3D ones, so obviously Mario 64, Sunshine, Galaxy, and then Odyssey, you can sort of see how they sort of explore those ideas, because I would say that Sunshine has some really long kind of shines, but also has some things that just will take you forever to do. Like, I mean, if you look at obviously a lot of the blue coins and trying to get all of those, there's just a lot of extra sort of fluff in there, I suppose. And then they sort of changed that up a bit when it came to Galaxy, because the sort of stars themselves, there wasn't necessarily any fluff, but to get sort of to the final stars, you did have to obviously effectively play through the game twice, with Mario and Luigi, and while, you know, slightly different experience, it's still effectively played the game twice.
Hey, he was slippery, that means something.
Of course it does. And then obviously you get to Odyssey, where you sort of end up in this slightly odd middle ground between those two, where, yeah, you can either go from really short to sort of however long you want in terms of the moons, but then there are some that will just take you a long time and maybe aren't necessarily the most enjoyable investment that could be. And I'm hoping that what we end up with the next 3D Mario game, whatever form that takes.
I'm so excited for that, and Switch 2 in general.
Like, I hope that we sort of, I suppose, get a bit closer to a sort of more perfect middle ground in a way. Like, take the sort of lessons of 64 in terms of being a nice, brisk pace, none of the sort of extra chaff, but perhaps adding in some of that more, well, some more of that idea of you can spend as little or as much time on an individual mission as you like. I think that would be sort of, I suppose, my perfect iteration of it all, but equally that's me, and other people will have different feelings in terms of what they want from their video games.
Yeah, like some people will beeline it from point A to point B. Some people like taking the slower path, you know?
When I say that about Odyssey, I will say that my gameplay style with Odyssey was that I didn't 100% it, but I did spend a fair bit of time just wandering around, seeing what I could do, and that's kind of the appeal that Odyssey had to me. I do agree that a lot of the extra optional moons along the way were kind of more busy work than things that were satisfying challenges in their own right, and that's the sort of thing that I hope gets cleaned up a bit in a sequel, because for the kind of experience I had, I'll be honest and say it's one of my favourite video games. Odyssey to me is just a beautiful game all around, but if you're a kind of completionist who feels like you need to check off these moons you haven't done, that's where I can see the little bit of backlash that it got around the time was from.
I'm one of those freaks who kind of loved that Galaxy had the presentation that it did, because it truly felt like next-gen Mario. There's a little bit of story, not too much, just enough. There's characters interacting, and that's really all you need for a Mario story, I feel. But Odyssey has it be on a gameplay aspect. I think the Galaxy games win in terms of atmosphere and... I was going to say charm, but Odyssey is a hell of a charming game as well. So, yeah, let's stick with atmosphere. Galaxy has a beat on atmosphere, but in terms of, raw moment-to-moment gameplay. Obviously, you have more movement options in Odyssey, and, you know, that's kind of what Mario is. He's Jumpman. You want to be able to jump as freely as possible, and obviously in Galaxy, you are restricted in, like, just what you can do, because you are at the behest of different layers of gravity, whereas in most Mario games, it's consistent all the way through.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the one thing that I would sort of just slightly rebut on that is just that I would say that when Galaxy came out, Galaxy, I think, was that sort of pinnacle of Mario platforming. It was just, obviously, then Odyssey came out and took the lessons from Galaxy and just sort of took them that next step to sort of perfect it even more. And, this level is iconic.
Yeah, it is, but don't forget Super Mario 3D World came between those two.
That is very true.
Well, 3D World was kind of going for a very different kind of experience. So, although, yeah, it is technically a 3D Mario game, I find it very hard to directly compare it to games like this, Galaxy, Odyssey, and whatnot.
Yeah.
The thing that I think where you're kind of coming from, Tom, with Galaxy, is Galaxy's setting and scope. It leaves this immediate impression. You're in the depths of space, and everywhere around is something new, and when you see it like that, the gameplay may just be a natural evolution of Mario gameplay as it was, but you feel like you're in this massive new world. And when Galaxy came out, it was like the biggest thing Nintendo had done with Mario at that point, just by the mood it set.
Which is funny, because when they first showed it off, I didn't think it looked like anything special. In fact, Reggie was just like, here's a new Mario game.
Well, that's because back then Nintendo had no idea what they were doing with conferences, let's be fair.
Yeah, and to be fair, they haven't necessarily had... I'd say up until... Well, they did for quite a bit of the Wii era, and obviously they've found their stride with the Switch, but they've always had interesting choices when it comes to some of their marketing attempts.
Yeah.
Obviously, the prime example being the attempt to market the Wii U, which, for all its flaws, was a really fun console with some amazing games on it.
Yeah.
It's just that they completely flubbed the announcement of what the Wii U was, and people just weren't ready or willing to pay for what they couldn't understand.
Yeah, see, this is why I want the Switch 2 to be called the Switch 2, because there is no ambiguity there. It's not Switch Plus, it's not Switch Pro, it is the next numerical addition from a Nintendo console.
I will say, like, the thing with the Wii U's marketing is that, to be fair, there isn't marketing.
Yes!
Yeah, I'm doing the thing that everyone does. It's alright, you can cry, let it all out.
Yes!
You monster!
But I'm taking the star anyway, fuck you. But yeah, the thing with the Wii U's marketing is more the fact that there wasn't Wii U marketing. The thing is that with the Wii, it was the kind of system that sold itself. They didn't have to try too hard to sell what it was. They just needed, like, basic trailers where they showed, like, families playing Wii Sports together, and, like, the Wiimote, it's obvious what it did, it's obvious what the appeal was, and they didn't really have to go all out. Whereas with the Wii U, there was potential with the tablet controller. Like, there were things that they could do with that, and if they explained that to people, maybe more would have been on board. You kind of actually have to explain that to people.
Yeah.
You can't just do the same approach with the Wii, where you just show, like, people playing the game and hope for the best. Like, no, you have to go a bit deeper, and they just didn't. They took their brand identity for granted, and it backfired.
Yes.
That's what's known as egotistical Nintendo. We've seen it plenty of times before. It happened with the N64 going with cartridges over discs, and it happened with the Wii to the Wii U.
I mean, I think sort of, at least from sort of currently where we sit, looking at sort of the perspective of Nintendo, they do seem to have learned their lessons in terms of how you sort of approach and launch a console and so on. But we will see what happens, because like you would think that obviously, like, you look at both Sony and Microsoft with the sort of various successes and failures of the PlayStations and Xbox lines, and they've sort of alternated really in terms of which one's been the most successful for a while, and it's only really now that Xbox is struggling as it is because of the interesting choices made around Game Pass.
Well, the thing with like Xbox, a brand that I think's interesting, and I think is like, and I've obviously got to preface this by saying that they have done some shitty things as well. But
without a doubt,
this is shortly after the news of like Hi-Fi Rush Studio being shut down, which I find incredibly poor taste. But what they're doing with the brand is Xbox is no longer just a console. It's no longer just a piece of hardware that you buy and play games on. It's their entire platform. And so the sales of the Xbox Series X or the Xbox Series S is less important now than just pushing Microsoft games out there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the approach they're taking. Sony are sort of... It looks like they want to go in that direction, but they're dragging themselves doing that. If you look at like the odds PlayStation Network Steam integration that they've been forcing and things like that. Nintendo, I can't see Nintendo going down that route, so they've pretty much now got the market to themselves, and that does scare me a little bit, because Nintendo, unchallenged, are prone to making terrible decisions.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
If I were to say my ideal dream for what Nintendo are going to do next gen, like, I would like them to follow up on the success of the Switch, but with like maybe hardware that doesn't immediately fucking break this time. That'd be nice.
Yes, I would agree on that one.
Where's the Nintendium, Nintendo? Hashtag where's the Nintendium?
Well, you see, we can outsource it to other manufacturers and they'll do it cheaper, and it doesn't matter because we've already sold like 10 fucking gazillion of these Joy-Cons, so who cares?
I guess. Before we get off the Game Pass subject, there was something somewhere. Obviously there's something somewhere, Tom. Get to the fucking point. There was an interview someone at Nintendo gave speaking about the value of their games, which is why they very rarely have price cuts or drops. And I feel why Game Pass, while successful in its own right for sure, won't really stand the test of time is that it devalues the implied and inherent value of games on there. Because why would you pay upwards of 70 quid for the new Call of Duty when you can just get it on day one because they spent, well over $1 billion on acquiring Activision and then cancelled Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4, you bastards.
Yeah.
But then you see Nintendo and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is like 50 quid, and it's like, really shouldn't be. Should be like 30 at best. But they're the ones making money and people see the inherent value in it.
Well, I think the thing is that, like, the Game Pass system, the subscription service system, it is going to be where the industry goes. Like, in a couple of... I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of gens' time that is just the standard, and, like, standard sales are, like, novelty things, because that's where every other entertainment industry has gone. Like, people don't buy Blu-rays anymore, they just use Netflix. People don't buy albums anymore, they just use Spotify. That's... I don't like it, but that's where business is going. And so, like, I feel like Microsoft are getting ahead of the curve, but also Nintendo refusing to kind of go down that route. I think that once Nintendo do cave in and go down that route, it's gonna be like the biggest shake-up ever. Because what Microsoft are doing right now is, with their own IPs, they are very generous with Game Pass offerings. Like, on day one, any new big, like, Halo game, Forza game, Gears of War game, all of their big franchises that you associate with the Xbox brand, it's there.
Yeah.
could you imagine if Nintendo went down that route? The kind of how easily they could snipe that if they just had like, you could play Smash Day 1, you could play the new 3D Mario Day 1, the new 3D Zelda. They could absolutely ruin that market if they wanted to, which is why I'm kind of very curious as to when they're gonna make their move, because it will happen eventually, and they'll probably do the Nintendo thing of like, oh, this is our new service we're offering that's been crippled and we're calling it something else and pretending it's a brand new thing, because they like doing that. But it will be a big thing when it eventually happens.
Well, first of all, I don't think that's going to happen, because Nintendo is Nintendo, and they would never let you play their precious IPs for free, even if you're already paying a subscription. Granted, NSO is a thing, so what the fuck am I talking about? But even so, on NSO, you can't purchase the games like you did on, like, the Wii's Virtual Console, or the 3DS Virtual Console. So, you will not own anything that you played. If you do not keep subscribing, you will not keep the product, you know what I mean?
That's kind of half and half how Game Pass works. It's like you either need to have an active subscription or buy the individual game, which is the part that I kind of wish Nintendo would kind of meet in the middle and say, like, yeah, you don't have this N64 subscription anymore, but you can buy the game you like from it. I wish they'd do that.
Exactly, so you could play it offline.
But the thing is, like, I think they'll cave eventually, Nintendo, because the thing is, like, they don't always give in to new trends, but, like, if you look at, like, say, the 7th generation, where Microsoft and Sony both went online, they had DLC, they had, like, downloadable games. Nintendo dragged their heels with that to start with, but eventually they started bringing in like downloadable content for existing games.
Yeah.
With enough outside pressure, they will. It's just they need that outside pressure, and with the other consoles not directly competing as console salesmen anymore, they don't have that. So it could go any direction at this point.
Really good.
I got a star.
You did, Flame, you did. We're all talking out from a conversation that is just way too deep for HFC, honestly. At least for me. I'm just a guy who shows up and talks. I love low poly Mario, by the way.
Yeah.
So funny. By the way, that other water level that I mentioned, Flame said it was adjacent, but what the fuck is going on? There we go. What is snow, if not frozen water? Thank you. King Pedant will be back next time with more Super Mario 64. See you then.